Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Alkebulan Awakening Series. My name, as always, is Oladele Dosumu. I'm the co-founder of the Emerging Alkebulan, and I'll let my sister introduce herself, and then we'll introduce our guest.
Hello, everyone. The name is Nduku. I am the host of Kumbukeni, an African woman, for those of you who do not see it obviously in my appearance, an African woman who is joining my brother to counter the false narrative that Western media has propagated against us and against our continent.
Okay, our guest for today is Dr. Bunmi Oyinsan. She's a Yoruba woman, part of my father, Yoruba, Nigeria. She's from the Sankofa Pan-African series, isn't it, my sister?
Yes, Sankofa
Yeah,
Pan-African series.
Sankofa Pan-African series. She has a channel on YouTube, and that YouTube is huge. She basically teaches about African spirituality. She talks about everything African. They also got children books that they share on that channel. It's called Sankofa Pan-African series. If you want to check her out on that. The topic she's going to be talking about today is something that a lot of Africans don't feel comfortable talking about. Today we're talking about the misconception of African deities as linked to African spirituality. A lot of us think deities are demonic, as because we've been brainwashed to think that way. So my sister is gonna talk about this today, and then if you got any questions, if you got any feedback you want to give us, just once the presentation is done, as usual, just put them in the chat for us, and we'll take it from there. Okay, my sister, Dr. Bunmi, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here today. And I also want to quickly thank the founders of Emerging Alkebulan. I think you guys are doing incredible work. So are my slides up? I don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him up now. There you
Okay.
go.
All right. Okay. So, as has been said, we're going to be trying to unpack some of the misconceptions about African deities and African spirituality. And the idea is to also explore the impact on cultural, social, psychological, and our economic lives as Africans and Africans in the diaspora. Can you hear me clearly?
We can hear you loud and clear. We're all good.
Okay. All right. Now, to start off, one of the biggest misconceptions that non-Africans have about us is that Africa is one um, is is one. It's like a lot of people actually still believe that Africa is one country, and when they do know that there are so many countries in Africa, they tend to kind of assume that our cultures, our practices, and everything are the same, whereas nothing could be farther from the truth. Africa is a diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-religious continent, and so we do not have a single pantheon of gods like you have, say, the Greek pantheon or the Roman pantheon and all of that. Our pantheons they're rich and they're diverse. So there's not one single African mythology or narrative about the many gods and goddesses of various African peoples. Although there are sometimes similarities in our creation stories, the creation stories of the different groups that make up Africa. I think I jumped one. Okay, yeah. Okay, so generally, African religious traditions are oral and rather than scriptural. So, which makes them dynamic as they are passed down from one generation to another through not just religious observances, but also through beliefs in spirits, supreme beings, and lower gods. Some African beliefs also venerate the dead and include ancestral worship. These are some of the areas that usually people who want to denigrate us, usually try to accuse us of, oh, they venerate their dead, they do ancestral worship. But the same thing that there's no religion where they do not venerate their dead or have respect for their ancestors. The very fact that we Christians believe in Christ is a veneration of someone who died. Yeah, they say they believe he rose, but he used to live on this earth. Much in the same way, like some of our own deities. It's the same thing with Islam. That you cannot even you're not even allowed to see images of Muhammad and all of that, but there's a veneration of what he represented when he
Mm.
was here on earth. So it's nonsense when they try and denigrate our religions by saying we venerate the dead and all of that. Oh, yeah, it's not a big deal at all. So beliefs are passed down through folk tales, songs, and festivals. In the diaspora, African religions have evolved through adaptations of religious and belief systems brought from Africa and adapted into a pantheon of divine spirits, such as the various Orisha, the Loa, Nkisi, Alusi, among others. So most of these various African religious practices have been syncretized by incorporating, that is in the diaspora, they've been syncretized by incorporating elements of Christianity, including saints and other forms of Native American religion and spiritism. And this speaks to the dynamism of African religion. It's continuously evolving. It is not static because it is steeped in oral traditions. It's one of the strengths of the various African religion, that dynamism. So um yeah so and with your permission, I'm going to be um and I hope I'm going to be illustrating most of the points I make here
Yeah, that's fine.
about African religions and spirituality with examples uh, from the Yoruba tradition, and it's for the simple reason that it's the one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
that's fine.
yeah. So yeah. Now the Yoruba have an elaborate um, we have an elaborate hierarchy of deities, each with special duties and functions. In the Yoruba tradition, the name Olodumare or Eledumare refers to the supreme being and the greatness of the supreme being and his everlasting majesty. And then another name, Olorun, literally translated, another name for that supreme being, Olorun or Oluorun, means the owner of the heaven above, or the Lord whose home is in heaven above. So the Yoruba pantheon has several other lesser gods. As a matter of fact, the jury is still out. The numbers given of anything from 401, onwards. Some say 700, some over 1,000, but usually no fewer than 401 deities. Yorubas have no less than 401 one deities in their pantheon. So they have some lesser gods and spirits, and who are collectively known as Orisha. Now, an Orisha is a god who used to live as a person on earth when the earth was first created. So, present day human beings are believed to be descended from various Orisha. And I'm using the word Orisha deliberately because the Yoruba language does not use the letter S to indicate plural. So we might say Awon Orisha, but in Yoruba we never say Awon Orishas or whatever it is. We don't use S to pluralize. So I'm going to be sticking to that. So when I'm talking about the Orisha, I will not say Orishas. So now, so although Ọlọ́run or Olódùmarè, the supreme being, lives in heaven, he is not remote. The Yorubas do not perceive God as being remote, but rather he is conceived as a social being who is so very, very interested in the lives of the people on this earth. He is therefore accessible and can be called on at any time, especially through various orisha. Now, the Yoruba, like other ethnic groups in Africa, have several myths or stories. I know when you hear the word myth, the tendency is to say, "Oh, why does anybody want to believe in myth?" But there is no major religion in this world whose creation stories are not steeped in myths or stories.
Ooh,
The stories of creation you hear in the Bible, in the
wow.
Quran, in Buddhism, they are all myths that have
Yeah.
been woven into the belief systems. So nobody should denigrate ours if we call ours myths or creation stories. That is what they are. So the Yoruba, like other ethnic groups in Africa, have several myths or stories, um, like in the Quran, the Bible, and so on. So one of these has it that initially the earth was a marshy place with Olodumare and the other Orisha living in heaven above. However, the distance between heaven and earth um, was much closer than what we have now, so that heaven was close enough for the Orisha to move easily back and forth between heaven and earth. On hunting sprees, they came to the earth to hunt fish, and what have you. And all they had to do to get from heaven to the earth was to climb down a chain that was made out of spider's web. And we do know now, this is a myth from ages past, but we do know that the spider's web scientifically is being proven to be one of the strongest you know, kinds of threads by science. But our ancestors knew this when they wove it into our creation myth. So yeah, so the earth at the time was a marshy place, and Olodumare then decided to make it more of a solid, more solid grounds. He therefore encharged one of the Orisha, Obatala, also known as Oshala, because is associated with wearing white. So Obatala or Oshala was in charge to go and create earth by turning the mashes into solid ground. So in order to help Obatala achieve his mission, Olodumare gave him some loose earth, um, which he put in the snail of a shell, and then sent him along with the pigeon and the hen to help him scatter the earth on the marshy surface to make it more solid. More solid. After Obatala did it, he went and reported to Olodumare that the assignment had been completed. Olodumare then sent the chameleon to go and inspect it. The chameleon reported on getting back to him that though a wide expanse of land had been created, it was still not quite solid enough. So Obatala had to come back to earth to make the earth more solid by spreading more sand, after which Obatala was also charged to go and furnish the earth and populate it. Orumila, another deity, was sent as his advisor to help furnish the earth. And when they were coming, they took with them the palm tree. And it was chosen because it is such a versatile tree. The palm tree was chosen because it could provide food, drink, oil, branches, and large leaves that could be used to make habitation for shelter for human beings. So Batala was also given three other fruit trees to supply more drinks and food to the inhabitants of the earth. Now, in addition, like I said, he was supposed to populate the earth. So Obatala brought the hen and the pigeon so they could also serve as food for the people that Obatala would create on earth. And then he was then sent, when he was coming to furnish and create people, he was sent with 16 people, 16 humans. No, no, no. When he first got here, he created 16 humans. Now, these people were the prototype on which other human beings could be made. So we can as well imagine that those people, because Yorubas believe that the world started from Ileife. So the prototype of all the people in the world today came from that place in Ileife. So these were the prototypes. Although when the Batala first made them, uh, they remained lifeless. They were lifeless figures until Olodumare breathed life into them. So that is one of the major creation stories of the Yoruba. Now, another creation story explains how Olodumare came to occupy a space so far from the earth. Because, like I said, the proximity was so small that going from earth to heaven was not a big deal. So the Yoruba believed that the sky where Olodumare lived was not originally so far removed from the earth, as illustrated by that first story that I told. Heaven was so near that people could touch it, you know. However, human beings got Olodumare really, really mad because when they finished eating, instead of going to wash their hands, some of them would just rub it on, on the sky. And
That's funny.
decided to move the heavens, his abode, far away from the physical reach of humans. Since that time, Olodumare has kept an eye on the world um, from his above in heaven. Now, like Nyame of the Ashanti or supreme beings of other African cultures, Olorun or Olodumare or Eledumare is believed to be the creator of all things and all other deities. Like the supreme being in these other religions, Olodumare is above and beyond lesser gods. Olodumare creates, sustains, protects. Unlike the Orisha, Olodumare is not worshipped directly in Yoruba traditional beliefs. For example, most of the sacrifice prescribed by the Babalawo or Yanifa, who are priests and priestesses of Ifa, the Yoruba divination system, most of those sacrifices are taken to Eshu, who Christianity and Islam try to make us believe is the Satan,
It's
who they try to
devil, yeah.
equate to the Satan or the devil. He is not. He is not. He is not in the same league with the devil or the Satan in any way, shape, or form. Mysterious, mischievous, yes, but not the devil, who is there to just make you do evil all the time and waiting to punish you when you get to hell and make to account. It is so contrary to Yoruba beliefs. So sacrifices to Olodumare are taken to issue so he can appeal to Olodumare on behalf of the person who consults Orunmila, through the Ifa divination system. The Yoruba believe that all humans are children of God, and Olodumare has a lot of names that tell us his nature, but they are too numerous here. But some of them are Alaye, the creator, Eleda, um, Olojo Oni, the owner of the day, the one who assigns and directs the day. So now these misconceptions, as one of the reasons why I decided to share some of these creation stories was so that we could now see how at least one African ethnic group, again, never going to use the word tribe, because they only use words like tribe when they're talking about us or people that they consider to be savages. When they are talking about themselves, they talk about ethnicity, they talk about clans. So I wanted to illustrate with one of the an African ethnic group, the nature of what we perceive to be the relationship between human beings and their supreme being. Of course, so a lot of the misconceptions that we have now about our religion, of course, come from Islamization, colonial and missionary narratives by Christianity, and which insist on depicting our religions and spirituality as primitive. But honestly, all we have to do is to look at some of their own books to
Yeah.
see the nature that they have ascribed to God. A God who creates everybody, a God who is supposed to be love, but then has a chosen favorite people. Those are, it just doesn't make sense. You
It
know,
doesn't.
our African religious beliefs are tied to the fact that as direct children or creations of this supreme being, we have agency. Even the Orisha are not supposed to lord it over us. They are there for our purpose, to be able to serve as intermediaries between us and our supreme beings. So, and of course, some of the damages that these misconceptions have done have been found their way into Eurocentric philosophy, which our
Yeah.
children are still being taught in universities. I mean, if people are still studying people like Kant, Hegel, who actually believed that black people were closer to animals than human beings, then we know the kind of work that we have ahead of us to demolish and change these misconceptions by getting to know more about our own beliefs and then using these beliefs to challenge Western this Eurocentric philosophy, as well as their literature, it's in their art, and of course media, this new media, digital media, um,
Social media.
yeah, social media. They are all things that are also constantly being used to erode, the our religious and spiritual beliefs by overlooking, the philosophical, ethical, and communal, the essence of communal underpinnings inherent in in our traditional belief. Na- na- yeah, so yeah, and what do these misconceptions do to us? mis- Representations, the erosion of our cultural heritage, and these misrepresentations, they lead to the devaluation and abandonment of our traditions, where most of us are too eager to be a part of the so-called world religions, the so-called major religions, without knowing that what you're going, about to say, what you are looking for in Sokoto is actually in your.
I like what you go to.
No, why not Sokoto, wala be Sokoto. Whatever it is you're looking for there, it's already
Yeah.
there, within your own cultures,
Yeah.
even inside you as a
Yes.
creator, as a creation of Olodumare. You have a kind of agency that is not recognized and acknowledged by these religions. The distortion of historical narratives, colonial depictions, and all of that they try to give the impression that their philosophical and theological frameworks are more sophisticated, but it's nothing could be further than the truth. Um, yeah, in terms of social impact, the stigmatization practices tend to, ridicule, our belief, and more importantly, the type of interfaith tensions that we never had became introduced
Yeah.
with first Islam came as a religion that was there to conquer you, to destroy
Yeah.
you. They could not
Yeah.
get you into their faith. When
Yeah.
Christianity came, They came at first pretending that they wanted to civilize you, but their intention was to actually dominate and colonize you. And you had to kind of choose. I mean, they tell you if you are not for us, you're against us, which was never the case with us. I know that in Yoruba traditional practices, you could have a family or maybe a hamlet or a village where each family there had a different god, a different orisha that was their own personal preference to serve as mediator between them and God. But it never tension. You could have a wife who was an Oshun worshipper, married to a husband who was an Ogun worshipper. The more the merrier, you know. The relationship between you and the Orisha, who is serving you, who's supposed to be so personal and not just personal. You know, it's not as servile as this as Christianity or Islam make us believe. I think Islam actually refers to human beings as slaves of God. Eru anobi. And then Christianity, whilst telling us we're children of God, tells us also that there are special children, like the Israelites are supposed to be, and then there are the rest of us, and there's also some. In fact, I think the Bible also makes reference to some people who are supposed to be children of perdition, whereas I know from my study of Yoruba traditional belief that if I'm worshiping if I've chosen one particular Orisha to be my personal intermediary between me and God, if that Orisha does not serve me, ask Osha, bo le lami, Oshemi bo shebami, you will talk back at me, challenge that Orisha. If you cannot redeem me, then leave me, and then I'll pick something else and dedicate myself to it. Those are the kind of agencies that our own beliefs give us that we've somehow allowed, to waste. And of course, there's philosophical and intellectual stagnation because we have not built on what we had, because we concentrate on looking outside and surprise. And you find that take the Ifa divination system, for instance. Scientists are now admitting that it is the basis of the Ifa divination system is not so different from algorithms used in computers. And our
Mathematics.
ancestors have always had those numbers. I've always
Yes.
played around with them. When they throw Diodu Ifa,
Yeah.
yeah, or then in reading it, it is the same system, mathematical system that they have now be using to develop the computer system. So it's crazy how we allow ourselves to be stagnated by not valuing, the things that we had. Of course, the psychological impact are obvious. This feeling that they know everything, they are superior, so we have to look to them to direct the world, even as we see that the world is not being directed in our favor. We see the warped economic global system, and we see how, in spite of being the continent with the richest, the widest range of natural resources, we continue, to be the poorest. It's insane. And we have issues of identity crisis. Who am I as an African? You know, who am I as an African? Who are we? Are we? Uh, are we? Am I an African because of my education, of my Western education, or because of my faith? If I'm a Christian or a Muslim, and all of that, where does my Africanness stand in terms of my appraisal of myself?
I am
You
loving you, Dr. Bumi, but go on.
Thank
Expose them.
and then, of course, there's lots of spiritual guidance. And by devaluing that agency that we were created with and the valuable spiritual resources that we have, we've become enslaved by these new shouting, aggressive conquering religions. And a good example is the relationship between your, say, average Pentecostal Christian and their man of God and the apostle and, and all of that.
I didn't expect you to go there, sis, but it's all good.
Yeah, so it's a, yeah. I gave you the example of the Yoruba relationship with their Orisha. It's nothing could be more different. So and then in terms of development, it hinders our ability to use the knowledge inherent in our cultures to their full potential. And another example I'm going to give you that is that the physicists are only just discovering is something called quantum entanglement. I'm not a physicist by any stretch of the imagination, but this is something that I know from my own research into oral traditions, orature, and the way in which it impacts the creativity of filmmakers, writers, and all of that. And so now the Yoruba believe that as a creative person, first of all, when you sit down to create, whatever your medium is, if you're a sculptor or a writer or a dancer or whatever, what you are doing, that creation that you create is nothing if you do not imbue it with your ashe. In other words, the power of the voice, your individual power, you speak that your creation into being, you know. And now, quantum physicists are just discovering what they call quantum entanglement, which, in the simplest terms, is a theory that is now being studied to prove that aspects of one particle of an entangled pair depend on aspects of the other particle, no matter how far they are or what lies between them. I mean,
Wow.
as a Yoruba actually believed that you could speak to someone. You could. I know that in the 60s and so on, when people were abroad and they kind of lost contact with their families, they said "Wọ́n pè wọ́n wálé," they would
Yeah.
call them, they would call back their spirits, irrespective of the system of the distance. This is what quantum physics is just studying, and this is something that we have always had, but have not developed to a point where we can actually use it for our own growth.
Wow.
Now, of course, it's all the
Yeah.
misconceptions have found their way into our curriculum, um, and the misconceptions continue in in our education by perpetuating these stereotypes. A few years back, an African American. I actually run a school, two schools in a primary and a secondary school in Nigeria. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the experiment that was carried out in the 50s in the US on African American kids with black and white dolls, where
We've seen that. Yeah.
so this African American friend came and wanted to see. This was just like maybe I'm talking about less than 10 years ago. Wanted to see, do that experiment with a school based in Africa. And to my chagrin, oh my God, almost every one of our students picked the white doll rather than the
Sad.
black one.
Sad.
And when we tried to find out why, all of them, all those who picked the white doll said it was because it was closer to the image of Jesus,
Ooh.
image of God, you know.
Yeah.
So and of course, academic research continues to be skewed in a way
Yeah.
that overlooks our spirituality
Yeah.
and our religious beliefs. So they continue to have profound cultural, psychological, and economic impacts. And there's need for us to promote accurate and respectful representations through inclusive education and our own cultural policies.
Yep.
Valuing our African spiritual traditions will help preserve their vital role and usefulness, not just to us, but to the globe, to the world generally. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll be
Yeah.
happy to take your questions. I don't promise to
Thank
have all the answers.
It's all good, sis. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Okay. My sister just left her contact details there. So Sankofa Pan African Series, Olubunmi Oyinsan at gmail.com. So just in case you want to contact her, that's her contact details there.
Yeah.
We
Okay,
also
Ondoku.
shared.
I
We
know
also.
you've got.
Hmm.
Yeah, go on.
We also shared the YouTube channel. Once I finish speaking, I'll pin it at the
Yeah,
top.
yeah, yeah.
So this issue of the white image, right? That's the biggest one right now. And I was home. I am born and raised Kenyan, so I was home last year in March, and the home where we were visiting for a couple of days had white Mary, white Jesus, white angels, white, 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 white. And you talk to our people and you tell them this now that we know, right? Those of us who have detached from the stupor of colonialism. The zombie factor, right? As Fela called it. Those of us who have awoken from the zombie factor, uh, we recognize these things. And now, when we're telling our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers, you cannot have. And it's so simple, but yet so hard. Because in Christianity, in the Bible, it says God created us in his own image. In the Bible itself.
Yeah.
But we never ask ourselves, if he created me as a black woman in my own image, why do I have a male, white male in my house? Why should I not have a black woman in my house? And the man, the black man, have a black male, right?
Mm,
Why does not every one of us have an image of themselves as their God?
yeah.
Please speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's one of the things we have to always acknowledge is that the residues of colonialism in any way, it's not, they're not things that we have very actively addressed. Now, I've done an episode that actually traces when this misconception started. And if my memory serves me right, I think I was looking at the so-called the Middle Ages in Europe, which happened to them as a result of they had 100 years war, they had famine, and then they had the Black Plague, which almost decimated them, which which made the monarchs in various European countries actually equip people that we are not being taught in history. We're explorers. They were actually mercenaries that were
Yeah.
equipped by their monarchs to go and look for resources with which to save and salvage Europe that was
Europe.
dying. That
Yeah.
was when the Americas were discovered. That was when Asia, when they were so-called discovery of the Americas, when they invaded Asia and Africa, and it was from in order for them to actually then successfully continue, that pillage, that pillage of other continents. They had to rationalize, they had to give themselves reasons, the reasons why they had the right to treat people and their resources and their land the way they were doing. And the way to do it was for them to come up with these spurious philosophies and explanations about the hierarchy of the human races and place themselves at the top and everybody else below, and then gave themselves the excuse that they needed to civilize us. We they thought they said they were doing through um,
Colonization.
yes, and colonization. Islam did virtually the same thing.
Yes.
They did the same thing. You know, with the trans-Saharan trafficking of human beings. You know, they had no resources. Most of their lands were deserts,
Yeah.
but they had to push the religion and use the religion through jihads, to conquer, people and resources, which they kind of, try to use to develop their own. So those things have been, they're still so much part of our social psyche to our own destruction. We need to actively. If somebody sent me a video of Festac 77 yesterday, and I was almost weeping.
Yeah, yeah.
I was almost, because it reminded me that at what, as little as that effort was,
It's huge.
it was an effort for us to actually, some of the things we're now struggling um, to advocate for. This need for global African citizenship, this need for us to stop seeing ourselves in silos. You a Kenyan, me a Nigerian, a Caribbean, somebody in the diaspora. This need to see our struggles as steeped in racism. You should see the congregation of people during that first act 77 that was in this video. The joy of being together, of recognizing one another, and so we're not surprised that we've never been able to have another one, or we've never been able to build on that. Because when the world saw that, they were kind of spurred into action to make sure that, that unity, that sense of oneness, that joy, the kind of power it would unleash, they didn't want it to happen. And so the colonial systems and mechanisms that had been put in place were then sharpened, to make sure, that we continue as poor and as uninformed, as we've been. Yeah.
My sister, I'm just going to ask you a question. And when I get guests like this come onto the channel, I get enthused, I get encouraged, and I feel uplifted, because basically you're speaking the same language you're speaking. So our diasporan brothers and sisters and our African brothers and sisters, my sister, what do we really need to do to get ourselves back to who we were before our history got distorted? Because some work needs to be done, and some of us are not prepared to do that work. How do we do that work?
Well, it's part of it is what we're doing today.
Yes.
Don't keep quiet. Whatever little outlets you have, just do what you, and then link up with others, like you linked up with me. But those who have the opportunities to be in positions where they can actually affect policies in their country, educational policies, economic policies, they have to, because our politicians somehow
The gatekeepers, my sister, they're not there for us, unfortunately.
yes, and it's not by accident,
Yeah. Yeah.
because our first crop of leaders, some of them actually knew what needed to be done. I
Yeah.
mean, there were
Kwame
people,
Nkrumah did.
Nkrumah, Nyerere, Kaunda. Some of them had this vision, but you see that every single one of them who had that vision was destroyed, either physically. I mean, Sankara, Lumumba, they made sure they either killed them or they discredited them. They worked with the negative elements in their countries to oust them so they could
Yeah.
put their puppets in place. And this is what we continue to have. I'm sorry to admit this, but as a Nigerian, we are currently have a president whose real name or age or where he comes from, nobody knows.
Knows.
For all we know, we have a president who might be a ghost, but the World Bank and so on will deal with him because they have information about him that they know. If a person who had the credibility and the vision had gotten, it wouldn't be so easy for them to go. Right now, Nigeria is in a mess economically. I think there's even currently a threat of a strike. The strike in Kenya, I keep saying, look, I am so in awe, respectfully in awe of the youth, in
Yeah.
Kenya, who have stood up against the oppressive president. But they also need to link their problems to the money that that these past leaders have taken as loans from these organizations abroad that are insisting on their president putting up these horrible taxes and bills that will continue, to leave people in hunger, negatively affect your educational, health, and other infrastructure. It's not enough to get rid of the local politicians. We need to link those struggles to the work global economic system.
They're actually doing that currently. Actually, before we got on, I was in a space.
Fantastic.
There's a Twitter space going on right now.
Yes.
The Citizen Assembly. If you want to get on and listen,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
actually doing that. This today,
Uh-huh.
the conversation today is on the economics and the tax and the debt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
More power to them. More
yeah,
power to them.
yeah.
Okay, can I just go to some questions on the chat here? I've got a few questions here.
Okay.
Give me a second. I'm just going to bring them up. Give me a second. Okay, this one here says, ask the elder if she's familiar with the Odinani, the spiritual system of the Igbo people.
I must apologize. I am not, but I
Okay.
do
Oh,
know that the chi system is one also. The belief in the chi is one that also ascribes agency to human beings in ways that Christianity or Islam does not.
wow. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we got another one here. Will we ever embrace African spirituality, given that many Africans are deeply entrenched in Christianity and Islam and are resistant to entertaining anything else?
Honestly, I I don't know, but I do know that for me, I was born and raised a Christian. My mom was a lay reader. I was,
Say, Mrs. I used to
Yeah.
be a deacon. I used to be a deacon in the church, my sister.
yes.
Shame on you.
But the thing is to question everything. And my attitude actually towards our own traditional religions and spirituality is also to question, because human beings will always be human beings.
Mm,
Our tradition, some of our traditional babalawos, our traditional spiritual priests, and all of that, they've seen the advantages to be gained by usurping the agencies that human beings were creating into, the kind of financial industries that they've
yeah,
built around themselves and their families. So, yeah, honestly, question everything.
yeah,
And then
Exactly.
when we start by questioning, we will then decide what works for me, and I'm not here to propagate against Christianity or Islam. If it works for you, fine, but then you must accord the same kind of respect to those for who it does not work for.
Yes.
A lot of the problems we're
thank
having
you very much.
between with all these terrorists and things like that is because of um, this idea that only one religion is right, every other person is wrong, and all of that.
Not only are they wrong, they will burn in hell for
They will burn in
eternity.
hell for it. Yes.
Okay, I
Hold
got
on,
another.
hold on,
I got
hold on, Oladile,
what?
before you ask the next one. This is something that is true and is different between African spirituality and Christianity and Islam, and I believe um, Hebrew as well. That's what we call that religion, right? It's Hebrewism. It's not Jewish. It's Hebrew.
Judaism,
Judaism. Thank you. So this idea that you can't question, right?
which,
This
by the way,
idea
is
that
the root of those two other religions.
if,
Christianity and Islam
by
are
the
well
way,
derivatives of Judaism.
Yeah,
The Old Testament in the Bible is almost a replica of the Jewish Torah.
Torah,
Yeah. And Islam, has a lot of the same scriptures that are in the Old Testament and in the Torah. They are all Abrahamic. They're
yep,
all Abrahamic religions. They have the same source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Islam calls Judaism and Christianity the people of the book, and in that way
People
they
of the
accept
book.
them, right?
Yes. Yes.
So this idea that if you question, it's blasphemy. It's in
Yeah.
Christianity, it's in Islam, it's in
Yeah.
Judaism. That if you
Yeah.
do it, you will be killed. Da 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 da. But
Yeah.
you find that in African spirituality, you can actually, because I gave the example of Gikoyo, right? In the Gikoyo and Mumbi, which is Kikuyu
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
beliefs of the
The
Christian, right?
hills.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Gikoyo goes to God and says, dude, I don't have boys. How are we going to procreate? Like he asked, you ask these questions, like
Hmm.
the things are not right. Why do we have hunger, God? What are you doing to us? Like, what is wrong? We are worshiping you every day. We've been good. Why are you doing this to us? So that is allowed in African spirituality. I
Yeah.
forget the other point, but go on. I'll remember it, I'm sure. It's
Okay. I think the final question there, because of the time, I'm watching the time because I know you're going to leave us soon. Has Alkebulan gods forsaken us? Why has Alkebulan ignored the spiritual powers to accept European lies?
Um, I to the large extent is I think, and I don't mean to insult anybody by this.
No, so you're free to say whatever you want to say, my
Yeah,
sister. You're in the right space.
we're complacent, and then also to some extent we've allowed ourselves to be intellectually lazy. It's
Ooh.
a question, yes, it's just a question of using, your own intellect, dedicating the time. Like I said,
Mm.
there's nothing like questioning everything. Even what I tell you, I mean, I say it on my channel. Every information I give you, challenge it,
Mm.
question it, and come to your own decisions. All I
Yes.
do is just share what I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And as someone who actually who believes not just in my own agency and your own agency, you know, honestly, I respect it if you challenge or question me. And it's the only way I think we can grow.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you very much.
my other statement, just for you, Dr. Bunmi, and for the person. The person had asked whether we will ever embrace African spirituality. What's happening in Kenya right now is a crack in Christianity, because it's amazing.
It's another schism. I think they had the great
It's
schism.
hilarious.
This is the African schism.
Because in the suffering of Kenyans, in the killing of Kenyans by the government, they see the church leaders going to the government. They see the church leaders inviting government officials. So Kenyans are being exposed to the
Yeah,
fakeness of the church
Yeah.
leaders, and they're starting to question. So now
yeah,
in the revolution groups of Kenyans, they're saying, we don't want to hear you talk about religion. They're saying that
yes.
right away.
Yeah. I think right now it's an awakening of
That should
the
always be
African
a personal.
spirituality.
It should be a personal thing, one
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
one. This
Yeah.
institutionalization of religion
Mm.
cannot, it did not work for the people who brought it about, which is why religion in Europe, how many Europeans do you even see, or Americans who are actually practicing Christians or whatever?
They
Exactly.
don't. They
Even
don't.
the people, the old in Saudi Arabia,
Mm.
where the law mandates them to all be Muslims. How many of them actually practice it?
No, they don't.
You know? And then we allow ourselves to be so easily enslaved by these two religions,
Yeah.
because we have no confidence in who we are or what
Mm.
our own religiosity or spirituality has
Yeah.
endowed us with.
Wow.
Which means
Okay.
our belief in these religions is another symptom of sign of our self-hate.
Yes, yes. Inferiority complex.
Yes, I agree. How are we doing for time, sis? Can we ask you how are we doing for time? It's nearly
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have about 3 more minutes, I think.
Okay.
okay. I'm gonna throw a question back to you. From our last guest, Clifton McDonald and Eli Anderson, we normally ask the guest to give a question for the next guest. So
Okay.
the question they asked for you is, are you living your life purpose? That's the question for you.
Am I living
Oh,
Are
my
you
what?
living your life purpose? Are you living your life purpose?
I think so. I think one of the purposes for my life is what I'm doing. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and one of the things that actually spurred me into doing this. I mean, I could be quite satisfied doing writing academic papers and all of that. But I came to the realization that not all of us, not as many people would have access, to the kind of information I have. That's the major reason why I started Sankofa Pan African
I
Series.
was,
So that at least, my 11-year-old grandson is one of my is one of my most ardent viewers of the channel, and the fact that I've woken something in him, and in other younger people, I'm definitely living my life's purpose.
thank you. We appreciate that. You spoke to my heart there. Yeah, we love that. Okay, we're gonna ask you. Have you got a question for our next guest, please? We need a question from you to our next guest, if you
Who
don't
is
mind.
your next guest?
We do not know yet. We don't yet. We don't know yet. Yeah. So we just asked a question anyway. Yeah.
So what kind of question?
Whatever's on your mind, whatever
Yeah,
comes to
maybe
you.
I'll throw this some question to them. Are you living your life's purpose?
Okay.
But
Okay.
oh, you know what? Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
Okay.
What's that?
We can
All
do
Okay.
that. We can do
right.
Yeah.
that.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, my sister. Thank you for sharing the wisdom.
Yeah, I wish you all the best with the Megan Alkebulan. Like I said, it's good work you're doing, and we need as many avenues as we can have out there.
We do.
Thank God for social media. I mean,
Yeah.
thank God for that. At least it's giving us an opportunity. I mean, I don't imagine any television station would give us the kind of access that we have. So let's make the most of it and use it to kind of change all those negative narratives about us.
And what that means too is go ahead and support the link we just showed you, because that's how we will continue to be able to do what we are doing. Go ahead and subscribe to Kumbukeni. Go ahead and subscribe to the Imagine Alkebulan, because that means that click means more people see it. And
Yeah.
the three of us can hopefully at one point make some income and continue doing this work full time. This is
Thankfully.
the reality.
Yes, we do, because we need to basically need to support our work, because we take time to get guests on there to do all these. We take time, and this takes time. And you can see we got our guests, out of a busy schedule to come and share wisdom with us. So
Thank you. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Asante.
yeah, she go, man.
It was nourishing. It was nourishing.
Atumari.
Ami.
Yeah.
Ami.
Thanks, sis.
Yeah, bye.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much. We're still live.
Blessed day.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. And this is basically what we're about. We're about decolonizing the mind and sharing our own story. This is basically African storytelling. And I was listening to this sister, and she was basically telling stories. This is how we share wisdom. So we need to open our minds up to actually embrace who we are as Africans. We're rich in culture and history and heritage.
Yeah.
Everything that you've been taught is not you. Re-educate yourself. Thank you guys for watching and listening. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Asanteni. Kwaherini.
Odi back on now.